Those who seek growth will be permanently ashamed, to some extent. That is the price. As the name of the podcast captures, it takes a lot of courage to develop as a person. It is embarrassing. It is shameful in front of others to not be perfect. It is a position of vulnerability, and there is a great fear around being seen as incompetent or just in general being vulnerable. This is especially true with things in society that are expected of adults to know already. Do you ever tell yourself that I should already know this? Or how can I be so stupid? Or what is wrong with me? Today I set out to bring clarity and help you work towards self-acceptance on these issues. Hello and welcome to the Value and Growth podcast. My name is Philip Frey, and today we will try to develop an understanding of and methods of working with the shame of learning. So the first inspiration for this podcast came from Stephen Franson's videos. I will link to his YouTube channel. Now, if you haven't heard of him, it's time to check him out. I really like this YouTube channel and his work in general. He is a therapist and an author, and in his YouTube videos, he usually addresses questions of self-knowledge, self-care, therapy-related subjects, and he's very good. He can really stimulate your thinking and give you some unusual perspectives without being unnecessarily shocking in the process, and that is a rare quality. And because he often addresses subjects from a deep level of wisdom and subjects that are pretty advanced, I was very surprised to see that he has a series of videos on self-care, and he talks about showering, dental care, sleeping, and I had a really visceral reaction to that when I first saw that, and I clicked on it, and there's no tricks in it. That is what it really is about. And I was baffled, and really my first reaction was that of grandiosity, or that is how it felt in the moment. These are such minor issues or minor questions, or they're so trivial. How to shave, that is just so trivial. And why are we spending time on this? Why is he spending time on this? And it kind of came back to me, and why am I spending time on this? Because I know that I'm not super advanced on these subjects, and there are big gaping holes in my knowledge. And when I stripped this feeling away, in a sense, and I went deeper, I realized that it was really shame. The shame coming from knowing that I myself am not adequate on these subjects, or subjects related to really basic level knowledge that society expects us to know. There were things that I learned very late. I wasn't particularly knowledgeable about flossing. I was a teenager when I learned about combing hair or folding clothes. I still don't know how to iron clothes. I probably don't know the right thing to say at a wedding or a funeral. I have an idea, but could I follow all the procedures? Would I know what's going on? I don't think so. So it raised the question for me, and I raised the question for you. What do you do when you have to deal with things that you should already know? But before we go into that, let's begin with a comparatively broader and easier challenge, that of shame around learning in general. And I will do my best to go through all the things that were useful to me. So first, there is the notion of healthy shame. And I get this from John Bradshaw's book, Healing the Shame That Binds You. And he says that healthy shame is a warning that we're approaching our current limitations, that we are in a territory where we are uncertain and therefore we should be careful. So it's just a healthy, natural reaction in response to what is going on. And a lot of shame is just that, and there's nothing wrong about it, and just has to be accepted as part of the human experience. But what if this shame goes out of hand and it incapacitates you? Well, let's look at some factors. Are there people in your company who mask their inferiority by mocking people? Are there any really sarcastic, bullying, cynical people around you? I mean, friends, family, romantic partners. Is your company tolerant of and even encouraging a failure insofar as recognizing that it is a key part of growth and learning? Can you be vulnerable around them? And I want you to really consider this. Think of the last time that you were vulnerable, that you admitted a mistake, or admitted lack of knowledge, or involuntarily made a mistake. What happened? How did they react? You can learn a lot from this because you adapt to it, of course, and you will tone down risk-taking if you're being attacked and mocked for it. It makes sense. The more afraid people are in your company of failure themselves, the more viscerally they will react to the failure in others, to really push down the feeling that's bubbling up in themselves, to mask it. They will snap, they will attack, and you know from that the fear that is inside them. The truth of the matter is you cannot have people like this and grow at the same time in your life. And it may not be everyone, it may be just some people may be worse than others, but you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice because these people will hold you back. And if you find yourself reacting to other people like this, you are holding them back. And usually a company that is mocking and bullying will attract people who are either bullies or victims. Anyone with a bit of self-respect will very quickly vanish from the equation. So I believe it is unlikely that a group of friends, half of them is very healthy and the other half is not very healthy, and half of them is growing and the other half is opposing growing. That doesn't happen. It usually is all or nothing. So look into that and make some decisions. Talk to them. See what you can do about it. Next, really imbibe the fact that it is normal not to be good when you're beginning to do something. Nobody is good at anything until they gain some experience in it. You were not a master walker, talker, dancer, climber when you were born. It took a lot of really painful practice, and we tend to forget this. Even though it is oft repeated, we still tend to forget this. Everything is a skill in life. And if you find yourself being very critical or attacking yourself about being fundamentally wrong, fundamentally broken, because you cannot do something to a certain standard, pause and consider, is this a skill? And it probably is. And then consider, do I have a lot of experience in this skill? Did I get great training in this skill? Also, even masters occasionally fail. So consider all of this and be really gentle. Be really gentle when you talk to yourself. And it might very well be that it's just a skill that you have to build, and you just have to get some practice and get some knowledge. And finally, there is something that I like to call therapy magic, or you could also call it journaling magic or conversation magic. And that is the idea that once you talk about something, Once you stop fighting the knowledge that you have an emotion and really embrace the fact, you don't approve of it, you're not happy with it, that is absolutely okay, but you also don't block the knowledge from your conscious mind that this is what I'm experiencing. And once you say it to yourself in your mind, or you write it out on paper or in your journal, once you bring it up in therapy or in a conversation with someone who is very gentle and compassionate and understanding, you will often find that it dissipates very quickly. And this is really an idea from Nathaniel Branden's second pillar of self-esteem, which is self-acceptance. And I often bring that up, and I will often bring it up in the future as well. It is really the idea of lining up with reality in your thinking. And if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed, if you're afraid of something, though it's difficult, try not to block knowledge of that emotion. And I have found it time and time and time again that when I really was ready to be vulnerable enough to admit a difficulty that I was facing or an emotion that was really hard to integrate into my knowledge, it dissipated very fast. So be mindful of this knowledge. And now that we have a base, let's look into the deepest, darkest corners. Things that you're supposed to know, things that all adults are supposed to know, but that we don't know. And then you say to yourself, I should know this already. Well, guess what? You're correct. It is not grandiosity, but it is a correct appraisal of reality. And what I mean by that is that as adults, we have amazing brains capable of handling the most abstract of questions, the most difficult issues. So you shouldn't be dealing with personal hygiene or how to hammer a nail in the wall or what to say on a certain occasion or who knows how to tie your shoelaces. You have much greater potential, and it is in a way using a very sophisticated tool for something very simple. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn these skills. Just because it's not right, just because you should already know it, you still have to learn it. Or technically you don't have to, but you will still gain great benefit from knowing it. But there's a second part, and it's sometimes an unspoken conclusion to I should know this already, and that is something is wrong with me. And this is what is not true. If you don't know basic things, it simply means one thing, that your parents, and to some extent your teachers, have failed you in that particular field. Because what is their job? It is their job to prepare you for life. So if you're missing these skills, they have failed to prepare you for life in the area. And maybe it was because of neglect. Maybe it was because they chose not to develop their own skills and thus had nothing to transmit. It doesn't fundamentally matter. What matters is the conclusion that you are not broken. You are not wrong. You're not stupid because someone has failed to teach you something when it was the appropriate time, when you were a child, when this was the right level of challenge for you. And once you realize this, it will really liberate you from self-attack. You will have a wise part of you that will hear this. Oh, something's wrong with me. I'm so stupid. I'm such a retard. I've heard all of these being spoken. And there will be a wise part in you that will say, no, this was not my responsibility. It is my responsibility now, and I will do my best to fix it. But the fact that I haven't learned it before, that is not on me. And that is significant. And don't forget, there's almost no one without a blind spot. but you don't see it too much because everyone is so committed to hiding it. Rightfully so, because in general, people don't get it. And they will say these things. They will say, oh, look at this guy. He's so awkward. He's so creepy. He's so stupid. And they will not link it to the correct source, which is a lack of proper education, a lack of proper modeling. And I will say that it is probably because they don't want to see it in their own lives. So be gentle to yourself and start learning, start recovering in those fields where you haven't gotten proper training, and you will eventually catch up with most things. And there might be things you will never learn. There are things that society expects of us that are frankly pretty useless, and you can really live your life without ever having to learn them. And with the rest, you have an amazingly powerful tool, your brain, that will help you pick it up real fast if you can go with the vulnerability that comes with it. Thank you for listening to the Valiant Growth podcast, and I dare you to flourish today. And one way you can begin doing that is by checking out Stephen Franson's channel, which I will link in the notes.